Okay, we're live.
Hello, and thank you for tuning into the Portland State University Studio MFA Remote Artist Talk series. This series is sponsored by generous contributions from the Wingate Foundation and the Dupree Professorship Fund by the Harold and Arlene Schnitzer Care Foundation. We would like to start this event by acknowledging that Portland State University rests on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas bands of the Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River. Multnomah is a band of Chinooks that lived in this area. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. This series brings together artists, curators, and critics from a variety of disciplines to explore the subjects of their work before a live audience. All of our lectures for winter term are being held remotely, live streamed through our PSU YouTube channel. Please follow our Instagram account at PSU Studio MFA to learn more about artist talks in the future. At the end of this morning's presentation, we'll be having a Q&A with Jeffry Mitchell and the MFA cohort, and we'll also be fielding questions through the live stream chat. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Jeffry Mitchell. Beloved Northwest artist Jeffry Mitchell creates expressive ceramic sculptures, prints, and drawings that investigate the complexities of the human experience. His works explore concepts of gender, spirituality, vulnerability, and self-discovery, often using the accessible and familiar imagery of animals and flowers. He received a Bachelor of Arts in Painting from the University of Dallas, apprenticed with a potter in Japan, and received a Master of Fine Arts in Printmaking from the Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia. Notable solo exhibitions of Mitchell's work include Like a Valentine, The Art of Jeffry Mitchell at the Henry Art Gallery in Seattle, Washington, Some Things in Their Shadows, University of Puget Sound, Tacoma, Washington, Shiny, Happy, Pretty with Tina Hoggett at the Missoula Art Museum, My Spirit at the New Museum of Contemporary Art, New York, and Documents Northwest, the Poncho series, that was at Seattle Art Museum. Thank you so much for speaking with us today, Jeffry.
Wow, thank you, Kathy. That's a nice introduction. And I'm really happy about the habit of acknowledging Aboriginal peoples in the land that we're on. It's a real honor to be able to talk with you guys today. It's I haven't done an artist talk in a long time, and it's very nervous making, but it's a luxury to be able to kind of reflect on my work and share it with you. So thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Ralph. I wanted to start off, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I wanted to start off by just saying that the work, when I get the chance to reflect on the work and like try and share something about it, or why I do it, or how it came to be, the thing that I keep coming back to is my deep ambivalence or uncertainty about a stance about my work, or even about myself in the world. And I think, this has to do with both nature and nurture. And my biography is like one of the main things that pops up for me when I start to think about like how it is that I pursued this kind of activity or make these things in my practice. And I'm from a large Catholic family, like one of 9 kids, and working class, gay, and we grew up moving every other year, pretty much. My father worked for Boeing on military contracts, so we lived in places all over the West, Midwest, in small towns. And this sense of not having any one place to call home is, I think, hugely shaping for how it is, or why it is I choose to make the kind of work I do. And one of those things is when you're new, especially as a kid. I mean, I think a lot of this is really young impressions of being the new kid in class, like coming into a school, and in the middle of the year, and being a new student in the class, and being very uncertain about you know, the place that you held in that kind of group of people. And so my fears and my uncertainties about my, I wouldn't say physical safety, but just like sense of place. I guess my plan was to be as sort of friendly and ingratiating as possible. So this, you know, when you see something like hello in my work, or sweetness, the decorative, it's all meant to ingratiate, I think. And so this is you can see it here in this kind of shelf thing with the backs of bears, which is sort of a pun on bareback, not a pun, but I mean, oh, the other thing is like I was closeted until I did not come out until my late 20s, so 29. And so the kind of suppression of my sexual identity was a you know, the fear of being found out, and struggling with my own you know, the torture of erotic impulse versus the possibilities of expression in the world. Not surprisingly, ends up being pushed into handwork, which I don't think is uncommon. But so what you're going to see in these first, I'm going to show a bunch of images here. I guess the first things that I think about are class insecurities and aspirations toward, or I just a default sort of aspiration to something of high class or wealth or lavishness. So it always seemed like that was the better, you know, it does in general, it seems like it's better to be rich than poor. I don't think that's always the case, or it doesn't play out always in every way, but these things kind of take their form, the cues for their forms from the decor of, you know, homes of privilege, as I saw them through like interior design magazines. Because I was living in places like Alamogordo, New Mexico, El Paso, Texas, Cheyenne, Wyoming, Minot, North Dakota, Great Falls, Montana. This is like, there's not really art museums, or at least we didn't know about them. And there's not a lot of civic cultural monuments and things like that. But there are, I was into like design, or not design magazines, those didn't exist. Things like Family Circle or Women's Day or something like that, that gave suggestions for kind of household domestic art projects, and interior design in those what's the Sunset Magazine, which is the kind of about Western living. And so that I think those suggested the forms that I might kind of work on or employ to make my work. The other kind of big influence is my grandmother, who taught me how to knit, crochet, bake, do patch, like quilting and that kind of patchwork quilts. And so on a machine. So that kind of craft, I think made a huge impression on me. And I went to school in the 70s where the canon, I mean, what was available or taught or kind of presented as art making practice was fairly narrow and really rigorously formal. So minimalism, I think, probably was minimalism and conceptual art were sort of the things that were considered valid, and there was still a real hierarchy about painting was at top, painting and sculpture, and then it went down from there. And printmaking and ceramics were certainly minor, considered minor arts. So I think I just by my station chose the kind of minor things to express myself. So if you look at something like this, these come from Staffordshire dogs, which is a kind of English habit that isn't in all these kind of waspy New England interiors, at least as I perceive them. So this is an image from a show at the Henry, which is a really beautiful kind of Beaux-Arts style museum, and this is my greeting sign cut out of plywood. So it's very crafty, and the kind of the sisal twine used to hang it, very homemade looking. And you can see these rooms are super elegant, and then the work is kind of a caricature of country kitchen sort of folkiness. Lots of flowers. So I chose, I think in a kind of a defiant way or a reactionary way, I chose flowers, flower painting, and folk motifs for my expression when I was in school, because it was not hard-edged painting or something super minimal or that even read as intellectually formidable. So I sort of took the soft route of yielding to yielding in terms of establishing power, and then tried to, again, this is all kind of an unconscious thing. So as not to invoke or provoke confrontation, I kind of took a step back and made things as soft and ingratiating as possible. And yet still, like, the motivation there is all this kind of erotic dynamic, and me worrying about class issues, and me feeling competitive, because after all, there is, like it or not, that kind of competitive art and art making, especially the way that we're engaged in it. I would say in a conscious kind of, we choose to kind of come into the ring, is both a competition, and of course it's not a competition, right? It's a super personal thing. And but in terms of any kind of confrontation, I always chose to be soft or yielding, I think. And ceramics was, at the time, not my first banner of, like, I did not ever identify it. And I still don't really. I mean, I know that mainly what I do now is ceramics, and I do a lot of them, certainly. And part of that came from my chance of, I had a really interesting ceramics teacher in undergraduate school, Dan Hammett, who was a superb potter and quite old school, but really, really good and knowledgeable. And again, I had a kind of a push-pull relationship with the whole thing. And I don't know if I my skills did not develop because I didn't have the talent, or if I chose to take a kind of more mud pie approach. But it was not, I did not have the consciousness of like a de-skilled kind of presentation, but I definitely did things that were more handmade looking or amateur looking than say he was an excellent potter. And then when I wound up in Japan, again, kind of by accident, I ended up spending almost 3 years there. Then that was made a big impression. I think I was 21 to 24 age. And the two things, I mean, first of all, Japan just is sort of mind blowing. And I, as a foreigner, and I lived out in the country, could float through this world quite just as a complete alien, but also very safe. There was no kind of ever any sense of danger. And people were really, in general, extraordinarily kind and gracious. And I had a neighbor who was a butcher. She and her husband were butchers. And I lived in a neighborhood that was mainly Koreans, nationals, but they're born and raised in Japan, but they're, I think nationality is paternal lineage. So if your parents were Korean, or your father was Korean, you are Korean. And because of it, kind of second-class citizens. But so these husband and wife Korean butchers lived across the street, and she was a calligrapher, and she's taught me for about 1.5 years. I went to every week and did calligraphy lessons with her. And now that just thinking about it today, that had a huge made a huge impression on me. And one of the things is this sort of spontaneous mark that is so practiced and ingrained that you don't really even have to think about it. And I think that there's this might be a time to talk about like working class notions of the value of labor, and that a lot of my early work especially was incredibly laborious, and evidently laborious. And the hope for that was that my people, my tribe, could see it and say, wow, that took a lot of time, because that was the kind of the lens through which they would look at its value. And I now think that, I mean, I look at labor differently, but I do feel like work, and a lot of work, does present the possibility, and lots of time in the studio, lots of time alone, but actually making, for me, is a self-preserving kind of thing, because it puts you into a state that circumvents fear and insecurity, and you get into this state of meditation, or what they call the flow state, or a state of joy or play, where you can, I don't know if you can tell, but I worry about everything. And I worry about my, is it good? Is it bad? Blah, 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 blah. And the studio for me then is this place where I can step out of that fear and step into, if not a joyful state of delight in making, one that's free of worry. So anyway, so this is the installation at the Henry, and you can see like all the furniture is made out of plywood, again, in contrast to the sort of beautiful Palladian proportions of the galleries there as they flow. And you can kind of see that in general, I know there's a lot to take in here, but there's a sense of domesticity, I would say, decorative object. There's a pairing, all the time pairing of things. and things that are decorative, like, I mean, these things in the back, these big lithographs, have, if not, tablecloth, uh, carpet, I don't know, upholstery, blanket, Afghan kind of feels about them. And then for, fancy furniture with objects indicating wealth and stature placed upon them. And the arena where you make evident your care for domestic space. And same with this, figurines on a country kitchen kind of shelf. So, plate shelves. The only kind of art we had in our, because we moved so often, it was impractical. And it was 11 people. I don't know how my parents did it, but we did not have a lot of objects around. But we did have my grandmother's china cabinet, and it was full of memorabilia and objects of, import for the family. So this, it sat in the living room, and glass with many shelves in it and a lot of tchotchkes inside. So that's what I'm doing here. And I don't know. I don't know if any of you have kids or you're gonna have kids, but if you did, it's an interesting question to me, like how sex was not a topic. And certainly the possibilities of having gay sexual kind of experiences was completely out of the question. And you have to, again, grandpa saying, this was before the internet. So if you're in a town of 20,000 people in Alamogordo, New Mexico, and you have this kind of, you're in 7th grade, say, and everyone is kind of going crazy with hormones, it's really hard to know what the future holds in terms of your life as a sexual person. And so I think, just practicality, and wanting to be good, because being good assured, a non-confrontational, existence. You just shut it down, right? And everything goes into, don't they say that Victorian kind of repression ended up in all this sort of handwork and like this weird sort of soft surfaces and lots of fibers and textiles and hair, hair hair jewelry and yeah, all that sort of repression, that energy, which is undeniable and foundational for like the life itself, gets expressed one way or another. And so I think that's when these, certainly uncertain of my sexual future, I handwork, everything goes into my hands. So that's, I think, what these are about. And this series is called El Puño en la Palma. El Puño is the fist, right? And then the palma is well, either the palm tree or the palm of the hand. And the arc of that in terms of just counting and opening up. When I think about it, it's kind of fist is not always about aggression, but I think it's certainly about fear and about well, it's prenatal, and it's it's very early on, and it's about anxiety, and then opening up and this kind of relaxing. It's like a yoga kind of thing. Anyway, I like this. And they look like trees. And TMI, I have got into fisting as a sexual practice because I think I was never that into my dick or me as being a top, or but in fisting, it felt like I kind of did have more reason to be, I just was better at it. So that's, I think, embedded in it. And all the work has this, I think, really strong sexual sort of thread running through it. But in the making of it, that is not what, I'm not going into the studio thinking I'm going to make like sex rich work. This is a show. Where are we on this? I'm yammering. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm going to go quick now. So that's the kind of background. So I'm just going to show you these things. And I have many good friends and wonderful relationships with other workers. So this is a show in Los Angeles at a now closed gallery called Ambach and Rice. And I love the room because it was very like 2001, A Space Odyssey, spaceship kind of feeling. And then these kind of grotesque and homey furniture and kind of grotesque objects filled it in a really nice way. But my friend Michael Iglesias made all the furniture, and that's where working with craft people who are really superb. I could never make these. It's just not my thing. I don't have it in me. It's not my skill set. But by putting my kind of lumpy mud pie kind of objects on something so exquisitely made, even though they're rough hewn, I think it's I don't know, good. What does it do? It elevates it. It separates it from just being funky or poorly made. This is called Not Waving But Drowning, titled after a Stevie Smith poem. And it's in the poem, you're looking out in the water, across the water, and someone's out there, and you think they're waving, but in fact, they're not waving at you, they're drowning. And it's this sort of shift to horror, and that sort of impossibility of that relationship or even helping at that point is sort of what's going on, I think, here. So all this kind of figuration, all this kind of reaching out, these flowers become hands that don't quite touch. The spout becomes this kind of the mouth of horror. I don't know. The ugly and yet really beautiful with like really glassy leg glazes. And here's another show in that same space. That's cast plaster, mainly cast plaster, and one group of figurines that are kind of come out of a. When I look at it now, I really missed opportunity to kind of load this table up. I don't know if you can see it, but the Guston figuration, Philip Guston's kind of figuration and the emotional content of that are a big influence in kind of the, I guess, touch of these of my ceramics. And now that I look at it, I wanted to make it a one big solid lump of figures, but live and learn. So these are all these kind of situations where wrestling, the beat up boxer, tender moment where a guy's pulling a thorn out of his foot, someone staring up at a tree / fist. This one is a teacher whispering into the ear of a student, and not a creepy way, just a sharing intimate knowledge. Here's a worker, a carpenter at work. And this is the man who stops to sing. So legibility becomes an issue in the work. And I think that it's interesting. Like I have made so many things that are kind of clearly delineated, and then I either slip on top of them or glaze them in a dark monochrome so that it becomes harder and harder to read. And I'm not sure why I do that. And this is the other hand, the kind of classicism of, well, this is plaster, but it's sort of thinking about marble and empire. And I went to school in Rome 2 times. So I was there for 2 different years. And that blew my mind, so going from the West, small town West, to even the East Coast, going to school in Philadelphia or going to school in Rome was mind blowing. And the kind of authority and the expression of power that classical architecture has, and text in architecture, made a huge impression. These kind of have a classical feel about them, the bear and the rooster, but the foot position is classical. And then this next little suite. Okay, I'm not going to worry too much. I'll just keep going. Was from I made 24 vignettes like this. And the exhibition was called Day and Night. And it was like every hour of the day. And I made these shelves like stages that had small scenes played out. This, for example, is, again, I'm going to have to describe it to you. This, I don't know if you've ever seen All in the Family, the sitcom, but many sitcoms have a scene that is a living room with a staircase in the background. And people come in the front door and up the stairs or do something in the living room. The kitchen's over here. This is a grandfather clock with a big American eagle on top of it. This is a shelf with some kind of, object of pride. Here's an umbrella stand with an umbrella handle, sorry. Here's a little bench where you put your shoes on and off, kind of Mr. Rogers, a la Mr. Rogers. And here's somebody, a figure with its head in its hands. This is an empty shelf with the mudra. This is the, I don't know the mudras, but this is the, one hand down, one hand up. I think both Buddha and Jesus end up doing this. This is someone sleeping with a night visitor, alien or nightmare, not sure. This is a fireplace with 2 little Staffordshire dogs, sunflower andirons that mimic, and then the hearth with, a pair of sculptures and possibly a clock up here. In Washington, D.C., at the Freer Museum, is a room designed by Whistler called the Peacock Room. And you can imagine this was one of these, it's a preserved interior that's moved into the museum. And it's extraordinarily beautiful, exquisite. And so in that room, Whistler designed these andirons that are sunflowers. So they would hold the logs, the burning logs. This is someone inside looking outside. Someone putting on his socks. And this is a old man thing, but the older you get, if you're fat at all like me, putting on your socks is like a real moment in the day. It just takes some effort. So there's a little bit of pathos and humor too. And this is called Emil Nolde. the German expressionistic painter rowing into the sunset. This was the final piece. The sun is setting or maybe rising, and I think it's setting, and this is a sunflower. The rooster and Emil's in his rowboat. And Emil Nolde, look him up. He made a series of paintings called Unpainted Paintings during the war. And I don't know, so I don't know enough about the biography. I thought he was forbidden by the Nazis to make his paintings. But then I also heard that he might have been a sympathizer. So I don't know what the exact story is, but I do know that these Nolde's paintings are amazing to me, expressionistic works. So here's a show I had at PDX a couple years ago, and so great to see these again because I like the work fine. Now I would make a different installation. But using stools and furniture as pedestals, again, it's my interest in shifting it into a domestic space so that the object is not held up and presented as if it's in the white cube gallery space. So it just shifts the intent of the value of the piece and places it solidly in kind of domestic decorative object. There's a Buddhist sculpture of a monk whistling or blowing out, and there are wires coming out, and they hold 7 little bodhisattvas. An amazing, I'll have to share it with you. I should have shared it with you previous. So in this case, this is the farmer holding a rooster, blowing out these flowers on wires, held up by kind of a weird table that has the image of the farmer again. And this is work that I made with Yvonne, where he kind of makes the basic figure and then I do my thing on it. This is a big tulip tree, like over the top, almost not nauseating, but a little repellent in its, I guess in its color, in its kind of fluffiness. And there's there's a Spanish porcelain company called Lladro, I think, Lladro. And they make these figures, beautiful porcelain, elongated figures, very elegant, but sort of like El Greco or something, this kind of mannered elongation of the figure. And they're glazed in this creamy white, soft blue, pink, and gray. And I'm fascinated by them because they're very expensive and they're sold in jewelry stores or expensive gift shops, excuse me. And really great on good taste, I would say. But good taste, that's that is not an absolute, right? I mean, that's a concurred on thing by whatever your group is, I guess. But so I was doing something that was sort of trying to reference Lladro porcelain. And in fact, I think I'm interested in this piece because it's so kind of lavish and wild, but it also does, I wouldn't say I love it. It grates on me. Here's a pair of whistling roosters giving peace signs. Gustin did a whole series of drawings during the Nixon administration, critical, obviously, of Nixon and Agnew. And I think it's called Poor Richard is the book. If you can find a copy of that book. So there's all these drawings of Nixon's and his life from college through his administration. And of course, I don't even know if there's a picture of Nixon doing the famous peace sign, but that's sort of one of the inspirations of these. The other one is there was a Canadian comedy troupe in the 90s called Kids in the Hall. And they did sketch comedy, really, really funny in that Canadian kind of way. And that one of my all-time favorite bits was just a 15-second film of a fat guy in an ill-fitting suit walking down the sidewalk whistling. And then at the end, text comes up that says the handsomest man in the world. So anyway, I think that's both hilarious and handsome is all about attitude. Or I hope it is. I want it to be. I want it to be about that, all about attitude. Here's one that Yvonne really had a big hand in, even though he doesn't want to be credited as co-creator, but he made this relief tiger. I don't know if you've seen Korean folk painting, but tiger is, a very popular motif in Korean art, folk art, and they are absolutely wild because within this form of the tiger and the magpie, I think is the setup, there is just incredible like graphic invention and super exciting radiating energy sort of mark making going on with the tiger's pelt and the tiger's eyes, and that's been a Korean ceramics are some of my favorite Korean art as I know it through Japan. What the Japanese loved about Korean art, it has made a big influence on me. So this is sort of a Korean tiger that then gets populated with a bunch of little figurines and flowers, and it's an opportunity to kind of go crazy and make whatever you want. And again, that's going back to getting into that flow state or that state of joy or play, that you set up a situation like a tiger pelt, but and you do whatever you want, so that's creating a space of freedom for yourself, where you do not judge it, and you don't work under the fear of judgment. And here's a similar kind of situation. So I think I do that a lot, employ classical form with knowable or what's the right word, familiar motifs, so that it eschews like evaluation or it avoids evaluation. Here's the tiger, kind of crazy eyed and big tongue and beautiful teeth. The backside is a peony. This is a front and back view. There's a tiger biting its tail. That's an Yvonne thing. And these are Yvonne's initials right there. So that's kind of a love letter. Where are we at time-wise? I think I need to.
We're about a minute away, but if you wanted to continue, like 10 more minutes.
I'll just go. Okay, I'll wrap it up. These, what, the one thing I thought about too was like the title of that show at the Henry was Like a Valentine. And I really think that's a great title for what I make, because if you make a Valentine, the gesture is understood in a way that it does avoid that kind of a certain kind of critique, or at least resist a critique in terms of craft or skill or smarts or whatever, and then the love expression gets made. And so going to this is sort of grade school snowflake on top of a drawing that's notational and crammed with ideas and notions that come during an episode of just drawing and dreaming and free associating. So they're called snowflake drawings. It also makes it quite an object, and it also makes it so that it can fold up. So, if you ask someone to take care of a pristine sheet of paper that's 24 by 36, they either have to pay for a frame or find a nice portfolio or pin it to the wall or take care of it. But if you can fold it, you can put it into an envelope about this size and it's quite well protected. So it kind of, I like that it survives. It gives it a way to survive in the world that's kind of more democratic and can move. It can move through the mail. So a lot of my, especially this last year, this has been a continuous thing. I make work for galleries, but I also do a lot of things that are specifically for my friends or my family. And and mail is kind of a great, way to do it. And nowadays, during COVID, especially, getting something like this in the mail is a cool thing. This is a lithograph on Gampi paper. And I was trained as a lithographer. And I guess the only thing I want to say about this is actually, there's a lot of things I'm thinking about now. One is I was using all the prints in one piece. So I would make, in this case, 12 impressions and then cut them out, glue them together and make this big flower. And there's something about the radial symmetry. I don't know if you can see this, but when you print on Gampi, which is a Japanese fiber paper, the ink goes right through the paper. So it reads black. It reads as bold and graphic on both sides. Now, this is before you could mirror things on the computer easily. So this is like I guess I feel like it's my invention, but whatever, that I would print on this really thin tissue and then get something that was legible on both sides. And I'd cut it in half, flip one side over and glue it together and get these axes of mirror image, which, in terms of graphic design is always a powerful, winner. Having mirror image work within a kind of a graphic field is a powerful thing. The other thing I want to think about is these little dots, you can't tell, but they're aluminum leaf. So they're metallic and reflect. And the whole thing, it has kind of this dazzling, atomized field of spots and dots arranged in structured by how it's constructed. And it I think creates an analogous sort of graphic, a graphic that's analogous to an ecstatic state. So, and it's sort of asshole flower, portal thing too. But the thing that I get out of this is a sort of dazzling, joyful ecstasy. It's a kaleidoscope, it's that same thing where the kind of like crushed glass and the chaotic thing gets organized in the pleasure of that organization. Here's a better installation. And I'm not sure why this is better than the one previous, but I think it is. And Jordan Piper at the galleries thinks it's these dark airbrush drawings. And these are airbrush drawings, which are reworkings of a Picasso painting called Night Fishing at Antibes. See, oh yeah, this is the second one. And there's, Snoopy on his doghouse. This is a Gary Panter character called Jimbo. Gary Panter's a cartoonist. And then this is some furniture used as display device. Again, my buddy's making the furniture for me. I draw a design and then he makes it. This is called a jug in a tub. Elephant candle holder. This is a pot on a stand. It's not uncommon in ancient cultures for ceremonial vases to have some sort of stand that it goes on to indicate its elevated status. So, oh, there's one. Then the pot becomes a vessel, not only literally, but then figuratively for whatever my imagination, wants to put on it. Here's a little desk set. So in, in calligraphy, Chinese calligraphy, Chinese, or Japan, it's Chinese in origin, but came to me through my experience in Japan. You have all these little devices, accoutrement, I guess you would call them, for the desk when you do calligraphy. And you have like a brush for the water, and then you have a little rest for your brushes, and you have a paperweight. And you have what's called a desk screen, which could be like a slab of mineral or something. It's like a scholar's rock. And then I put in like a vase for flowers, and this is a little water thing that you put on your stone, ink grinding stone. So it's all put together in this set, and then put on this sort of bat decorated table thing. It's a sculpture, but it is comes out of that kind of thing. So it's sort of useful utensils that are then turned into artistic expressions. And then I use that as a form for my expression. And here is a big, lion, Foo Dog. At the gates in Chinatown, they have those giant sculptures of those fantastic, they're kind of dogs. I guess they're lions officially, but they're fantastic. And again, it's an opportunity to kind of go into a flow state, or go crazy, or, play with dolls and make up narratives and add figurines or decorative kind of impulses, things like that. This is, I think, the last one. Oops, almost. And now I'm starting to do airbrush on fabric. So this is the beginning of one that I'm working on. And fabric, not unlike the kind of the paper, the way I folded it up, is fantastic if because you can fold it up and put it in a box. And I shipped one to England, and it was gigantic, like a big picnic blanket. And then you just unfold it, and there it is. It's like shipping art, actually, if you're a sculptor or painter, becomes a real issue. And I'm not saying that's the only reason I'm working on fabric, because it has other kinds of advantages or meanings. But I do think I like that I don't have to worry about shipping. Now, and this, I got a chance to go to China and make porcelain objects in a town called Dohua, which is the mine. It's not, Jingtianjian is the main imperial kilns, porcelain kilns. But Dohua is where a kind of porcelain called Blanc de Chine is made. And I got to go and make some things there. And so I made these plum trees with figures. And the porcelain is amazing. So that's it. That's the last one. So, questions?
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, wonderful work. I love the stories behind these works. I guess maybe we should wait for everybody to get back in the room.
Sure.
Are there questions from the group?
It's interesting. I mean, have you all given artist talks where you're in a room with people? I mean, you have, Ralph.
Mm-hmm.
It's so different to just be all alone and sit in front of your computer. I saw Kathy's face, but which was nice. Thank you for nodding, Kathy. That was like helpful. But you get no you get no energy response. I mean, so the performance aspect is kind of is weirdly it's different.
Yeah, it
Anyway.
can feel oftentimes that you're sitting in your own echo chamber, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
But then you can like fidget and like kind of not worry about the what the rest of your body is doing through the process.
That's true. Yeah, you're just ahead. Yeah.
I guess I have a question maybe to get us started.
Sure.
Well, I have a couple of questions, but maybe I'll just ask one. You can well, first I want to talk I want to hear you talk a little bit more about those snowflake paintings or drawings, those works on paper.
Mhm.
And you kind of talk about them as
Mhm.
being really loosely associative, but the formal qualities of them are so compelling.
Yes.
Like they feel so like everything just sits very purposefully. And when I think about like loosely associative things, like they oftentimes, I don't know, kind of feel like vomit. But these don't feel like that. These feel very thoughtful. And so I was just kind of like wondering what your loose association process is when it comes to drawing, or what your approach to drawing is.
Well, that's a good question. I know. I mean, it's alternately notational, meaning I have an idea that I want to record, say, I don't know, whatever, either an image that I see or an idea that I have. And then it alternates to a formal kind of placement of things. So I think I go back and forth in terms of formal decision making, or I'll take this piece started, you can't tell, but it's kind of a fat guy with suspenders with a mustache and glasses. Here's his hat, and here's his legs. And he's holding shopping bags. You can't tell this, but this is one of the bags. And it's a picture of someone I know who posted a picture of himself in these fancy Japanese denim jeans with suspenders, a fat man jumping and holding shopping bags. And so I love that. So I drew it. And then in the end, it got turned upside down, but that was the center. And then maybe I thought, oh, maybe I need something on the border. So maybe I put these semicircles in here and painted them different colors. And then I would say, oh, maybe I don't know, but you know what I mean? So it's like partially formal and partially just notational, like, and then once I get a few things in, I'm like, well, I need to probably fill this space. So I need to come up with something. So it's a meandering kind of path. So it's not meant to be a singular message. And then also because you fold it up, the cutouts give it a real like X, Y axis sort of structure, right? So, like this. And the one thing I've arrived at is this is a semicircle, this is a rectangle, and this is a triangle. And I think there's a Zen ink painting that's a circle, a square, and a triangle. I don't know, basic. And so that's what, instead of like having to come up with an original cut shape each time, I just employ that as a device to kind of keep going and keep moving and cutting, because then I know what the shape is going to be. But it's not always that. But does that answer your question? So it goes back and forth between being just like a telephone drawing, that kind of doodle. Although that's probably changed too. I guess, do people still doodle when they're on the phone?
Do.
Do they? Okay.
Maybe not on the phone, but people definitely do doodle.
Mm-hmm. Like in class or during this lecture, just kind of be over here and just, yeah. So I think it's a combo of that kind of doodle, and then at some point it really goes into kind of a formal decision-making thing. Like maybe I'll put a rainbow in it, or it needs to be colored. And it's usually ink, pencil, and then watercolor comes, later. But this one like has a rainbow here and then upside down here. And these flowers kind of echo these flowers, and these tigers echo these tigers. So there are, really formal structuring devices in there that is my habit, that I think help them be not just vomit. That's the thing about this. Where is the? Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. These, like having it doubled really does redeem any kind of homely mark. Like if you have a homely, like an ugly blobby, or it doesn't have to be, I don't have to be pejorative about it, but any kind of mark, if you double it precisely, mirror image it, it changes the kind of the quality of it and gives it a sort of visual reason to be or something. So that's why I think this, again, it sets up a space that's really liberated in terms of drawing. Like if you, like you don't really, I made a mistake. I mean, I don't know, the drawings that you did at the Rauschenberg Foundation were kind of one shot, right?
Yeah.
Calligraphic. And like you somehow, I don't know how you did it, what your state of mind was, but you got out of it wasn't a test of perfection or something. So they have a kind of flow and an energy that then you judge them in a different way than you would, like, I don't know, like an academic drawing of the body or something, or where there was a right and wrong,
Yeah, it's
and
just like an expression of movement, and it's just about trying to figure out what can I do given this, how my body wants to move. Which leads me to my next question, which is in the beginning of your talk, you kind of talk about having this Catholic, repressed Catholic upbringing, and then that kind of like colliding with this erotic impulse, and how that then gets translated into handwork, or like the energy of your handwork. Can you talk about that a little bit more? I thought that was really interesting.
Well, I mean, has everyone been in a Catholic church or churches? I mean, they are compelling, I think. They both in their, chilling at times, feels, I mean, I especially as a kid, the setup is really amazing. Like, I mean, some are fancy, some are not. Some are huge and, just powerful. Others are a little more homey. But even the smell, the air, the cleanliness of it, the way objects are arranged, something's. I mean, even if you're alone, I mean, the people around you tell you how to kind of take in that impression, but also the setup is there too, and ritual too lets you know, any kind of ritual lets you know this is like outside of ordinary space. So then you have this sort of weirdly erotic imagery going on, like of the crucifixion, which is very super I would say dissonant with the well, it's dissonant with the message of, purity and piety and chastity and this, I just think there's so many bad things that come out of Christianity and Catholicism. so much unhealthy human like deformation and really, I mean, look at politically. I mean, I'm really anti-Christian these days, because politically the banner of the Christian right is really foul, and wow, hold on, there's so many things I want to say. But if you go into a church and this like as a kid especially, and you see this body, the dead or dying body of Christ nailed to the cross with the gash in his side, and probably made by a gay guy, probably some kind of like projection. And then you go into the confessional and that weird kind of scary intimacy. Like, so you're in this dark room, you're kneeling down, and there's this screen, and you can't see the priest, but a door slides open and you're whispering through this little thing, and you just get chills. And just the organization of things, like processional, and then up here's the altar. I mean, it all makes sense. They've done a good job at making that impression of power, and that they are the intercessors between you and the divine. And really, I think the reason why sexuality is so repressed is because that is certainly one path to the divine, right? Is real good sex. Real good sex is transcendent and puts you into like a state of eternity and ecstasy and joy and all the good things. So I think a lot of good artists probably were raised in repressive cultural situations, and the Catholic Church is one of the best at that. And not everyone is probably born to be an artist. Although art is the big tent of all times. I mean, it can handle all kinds of people and expression. But I do think if you're raised Catholic and then experience that, it's a rich, especially if you feel outside of it, I guess. I mean, feeling outside of many artists come from places of feeling outside, right? So I don't know, blah, blah, blah. I'm blabbing. Does that answer your question at all?
Yeah, I guess so. I was just thinking about, well, I guess to be more specific, like you're talking about the energy that you put in your hand as you're making ceramics, or like you're making an object.
Mhm.
And I feel like when I'm looking at your work, I definitely see a particular sensibility to object making. In terms of
Mhm.
there's like a rawness to it, but then there's also somewhat of a control to that rawness. It feels like when you were talking about slowness, like, yeah, like if something was to be raw or like handled in maybe a less technical way, that you would be slow. If it was handled in that way, then you would be somewhat slow. But in this case, you're slow, but it's like you're also doing these things that are not necessarily about technicality. They're really about just trying to
Right.
figure out what you can do with the material.
Mhm. No, I think that's right. And again, that's where that kind of real curiosity and sort of like being present in the experience of manipulating the material is, instead of like coming up with a good idea and then executing it. I think that's maybe what you're talking about, is that's an optimum kind of state for me, is to be present in like exploration or execution with my hands, instead of having, and then that gets revealed over time. or through the making of something. I do think that it's fun. I mean, it's interesting to look. I don't look at images of my work normally. So to kind of go through even just this is like the last 10 years or something. This is selections from it. I mean, I make a lot of stuff. I make a ton of stuff. And when I go back and review it, I realize my experience of what it looks like at the time can be quite different from what it looks like upon review. You know, sometimes better, sometimes worse. I mean, I have a different kind of lens for evaluating it after the fact, you know. So, and that's that makes sense to me too.
Yeah.
But that's for me, there is a kind of mental health or salvation thing about just working is sort of necessary for me. And it's not virtuous the way, like I used to think, and the blue collar thing is if you work hard, that's virtuous, you know. But now I think it's not so much about that. It's more about it's what gets me through the day, you know. It's like necessary for me. So there's a lot of stuff ultimately. And then you kind of sift through it later with a different sense of like evaluate, you know, different rules for evaluation.
Raja has a question.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. You mentioned earlier that you mentioned kindness and kind people around you, and maybe kind teachers and supportive friendships. And I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about kindness for you personally and in your work, because in my experience, especially in the academia, there's a lot of talk about seriousness and rigorous work. And I really appreciated when you talked about kindness. And so I'd like to hear a little bit more. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Rigorousness and seriousness, I really think that is one form of working and relationship that is that works well when you have a ton of different people and you maybe don't have friendly necessarily or familial or relationships. So when something is more formal, like or institutional, it kind of demands maybe that things not have the elasticity of and certainly the warmth of a friendly or kind of relationship. And so I think that works well, like for official business. Like I keep thinking like the IRS should have a different attitude toward me because you know, because we're making art and we don't, it's uncertain. We don't really know if we're going to get paid, but it's still something of value, but you can't quantify the value. So, but it doesn't work that way. So then you have this they have rules, and the rigor of the rules like is how that, I mean, the IRS probably would not work well in a kind of relationship sort of way. It would work well for me, but not for them. But I just think that I will say this about my family. Being in my big family, and I have 23 nieces and nephews, and I have like 10 great nieces and nephews, and I have all these people in my life. And so I never, first of all, I mean, I'm gay, but I never woke up and thought I want to have a baby. I want to raise a kid. Did not have that. And I also knew that if I completely was completely poor or had no job or home or anything, I would have some place to go because I have a big family. And I think that allowed my habit of working with kindness and warmth. I mean, something that kind of gift exchange economy, I mean, I think it's my nature too. You know, I mean, I just operate that way better. But I think that if I were all alone in the world, it would be harder to operate in that way than it is for me, because I have, unconscious though it may be, this kind of safety net of a huge family. So I think it's a particular thing for me. But I do think that it's something that I cultivate. And I do have a lot of, because of it, I have a big circle of friends and people I love, and I feel that give me a sense of like security and, you know, all the things I need, you know, just emotionally. But, you know, it's hard. It doesn't work for everyone, you know, it doesn't work in every situation, I would say. And I get, you know, I met Simone Lee, and she was working down at, do you know that work? I mean, she was working down in Long Beach, California. And, you know, she's going to, I think she's representing the US in the Venice Biennale this year. She is like super rigorous. Like, her practice is really intellectual. She has to be clear and unwavering. And it's so like, the foundation and underpinning is so solid. And I think it has to be that way for her, for what her work is about, that rigor is essential, you know, and kind of, and it's not about making people feel good. Maybe people do feel good, but that's not the purpose of her work, as I see it. So, you know, I think it's case by case, but for me, that's like, it's essential to me to have a kind of warmth and friendliness, and kindness is, I think, a worthwhile thing. And, you know, Christianity, interesting. It's so hard for me to like it right now, but I do think that was a message I maybe got out of Christianity early on too, is something about kindness. Or at
Yeah,
least from
thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's interesting also for me, because I don't think that rigorousness is opposing kindness. I don't think that, you know, it's either
No,
one or the
not.
other. Right.
No.
Yeah.
But softness does make, physical softness makes surface indeterminate. And so when it's, you don't know where something, you know, your push will stop or what will support, those things make people uncertain. On the other hand, warmth and a sense of embrace and that kind of thing can make people feel at ease and more confident. I don't know. It is always case by case, kind of.
Yeah, Kathy?
I'm not sure I have a question. I just have maybe a comment that this one piece that we keep looking at as you keep talking about Catholicism and Christianity, I keep thinking of a rose window. And I'm fascinated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. That's part of what you were doing here. Your influence they're so clear. The white of the marble, the green of that jade. But you really haven't talked a lot about, I hope you don't take this wrong, the Disney aspect. You've got little birds on your shoulders, and that's where the kindness comes in. And I just see a lot of cartoon loveliness.
Disney's huge, right? Disney, wow. What do I want to say about that? Um, yes, Bambi. I mean, the cast of animals in Snow White and in Bambi and in Sleeping Beauty. I'm trying to think if there are other ones. Is super important for me, and so I think that goes back to. I mean, I wonder what at 62 you guys will reflect upon your work and see in it, but I mean, not a lot has changed in terms of like what I, even though I keep making, you know, I feel like I'm making new things all the time, but it's all about something that it's all about this one thread. It's about security, or about security maybe. um and the and watching Disney was, and Mary Poppins, very early, like huge, made a huge impression on me. I think it's the first movie I've ever saw in the theater. And yes, when, you know, when you're little, what makes you feel good and safe and happy is something that I don't think ever goes away. So, you know, like mother's cooking, or you know, whatever it might be. But Disney's huge. And then of course, like anime and the Japanese thing. And I mean, I had no particular interest in Japan when I went. It just kind of came up. I went and taught English in 1980, right out of college, and found out that my personality fit really well in that culture, partially just because I was this like blonde foreigner who had no one was cruel or mean, except in their just they thought I was weird, and kind of, someone came up to me once on the train and touched the hair on my arm, and they said, "Oh my God, that's so repulsive." I mean, in Japanese. And but no, I wasn't going to get beat up or ripped off or anything like that. So anyway, but that Japanese kind of cuteness, that culture and that sort of stuff, I totally get. And it's disarming, and it sets up a mutual understanding of non-aggressive, you know, relationship. So I dig that. And I'm trying to think about, I also like something like children's book, illustration, Babar, and that kind of thing. I've always liked it. And I like it, of course, because it's kind of feels like childhood and nostalgic. But I also think it's a super sophisticated refinement of in terms of image making and drawing, like how you reduce or stylize a character that ends up seeming quite simple is hard to arrive at, especially one that really resonates, like how, like Hello Kitty, like how the proportion of how the eyes fit within the scale of the head, and then, you know, how you create charm is not an easy, it is not an automatic thing. And so I really think that, you know, I used to have this very hierarchical, I mean, that's my era and stuff. And this era's things are different. Things are more, I think, more egalitarian, and it's great. I mean, the art appreciation of things in the art world is so much broader than it was when I was, you know, 20 years old, where cartoons were just sort of like, you know, not serious, you know, it wasn't rigorous, it wasn't. And I think now about all these like amazing illustrators and oh God, I mean, there's a million of them, but you know, cartoonists who are just like such outstanding artists, as great as any, you know, as any, you know, whatever you'd say, like high art painter kind of thing. Does that answer your question, Kathy? But
Thank you.
yes, important, very important, Disney. And, you know, I get that Disney's, you know, people love to hate Disney, and I get that, but I can't deny the impression it made on me. And I love musical theater, and I love I mean, the thing I didn't talk about is corniness, and I still have to think about it. I mean, I don't know that anyone's done any writing about it, but enthusiasm and corniness are things, like, I think there's a expression of enthusiasm in my work, and that steps into corny at times, or certainly walks the edge. But and I wonder, because I myself, I say, I want to say, don't judge me as being corny. You don't know me. But I judge some things as corny too, like cheesy, corny. And I'm trying to think, I've been listening to Celine Dion lately, and that is something that, wow, I'm just kind of sitting with, how do I feel about this? Or there was one other artistic express. Oh, John Denver. Do you know who John Denver is? My mother. Oh, I'm living with my mother most of the time now, my 91-year-old mother, and she loves John Denver. And I'm like, it's so corny. It's so corny. And yet incredibly, like, was global, a huge global star. And Celine Dion too, same thing. I'm like, is it corny? Can I like this? And so anyway, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I think I do. I trade in corn at times. So
I think there's also a relationship between the corny and the campy, right? And that it's like something can be corny, but then it can be really cool for a certain group of people.
yeah, absolutely.
Get it, right? So it's like there's also a part of that that's very like discreet and exclusionary in some way.
Well, suddenly I flashed on Dolly Parton and then RuPaul's Drag Race, and I cannot. Well, I can't believe that Dolly Parton is as popular as she is. I love Dolly Parton.
Amazing.
She's amazing, and RuPaul, and what RuPaul has built, the bridge he's built to ordinary kind of Americans, blows my mind. Like, drag is now not what it was, you know, back, say, when I first started seeing drag shows in the 80s, maybe, you know, that was like really you know, unto the kind of queer world. And now it's just, people turn it on at, you know, Wednesday at 7 or whatever. I mean, kids watch it all the time. I watched just a TikTok makeup tutorial by some 11-year-old boy. I was like, wow, that is just so amazing. It's so amazing that is not, he doesn't live in terror of being like beat up or murdered or kicked out of his house, you know. I think that's great. Can we say it's progress? I think you could say, you know, although not everywhere. It wouldn't be safe some places, but anyway, yeah. So you're right. Can't be corny. It's like, and it definitely has to do with your group. I went to LA one time with a really like famous furniture designer, and we were meeting clients, and they would look at something, could be anything, and they go, oh my God, that's so great. Oh my God, that is so great. Oh my God. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's really cool. And then they'd see something else, oh my God, that's so horrible. Oh. And then pretty soon, at the end of this kind of 4 days of going around with these people that just knew exactly what was great and what was horrible, I was like, I don't I don't even know anymore. Like it was like this weird thing, and that had to do with kind of like celebrity clients, and it was this world that was, it was hilarious. I mean, easy to kind of parody, because it is, there is that kind of cliche of the bitchy queen coming in and just like, ugh, no, this, no, no, this, oh my God, I love it. Oh my God, I love it. But it's also true. There's also an eye of like that, of appreciation that normal folk don't get, of the rare thing, the rare, beautiful thing. There is a, what is his name? Tony Duquette was a Hollywood, I think he designed like stage sets and interior designs. And it is, it's worth looking up, because super kind of flamboyant interiors with tiger skins and, jade and malachite and like silk pillows and chandeliers. But a lot of it is just made out of like chicken wire and paper mache and gold spray paint. And it's a really, and he moved in this world of interior design. So it like Liberace sort of gay, without, of course he was married and designed for all these rich people. Anyway, a world like that where it's like, I think really brilliant and kind of transgressive. And even though that's not my intent, I like the idea that my work could kind of fly into a situation where it doesn't quite belong, but maybe is a little transgressive, or it's uncertain, like it's cool because it's weird. I don't know. Anyway, look up Tony Duquette.
Just looked it up. It's very decadent.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I like this idea that this, like, through, like, that you can kind of like, you can survive through like living a life as opposed to resisting something.
Yeah.
There, like, it serves alternative possibilities for how to make meaning out of life. But we're out of time. It's 12:03. Jeffrey, I feel like we could just talk to you forever. Like, you have a lot of.
You guys are so sweet. I really feel happy now. I was so nervous, but it's been really great. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks
nice
for
to meet you all
today.
I hope to see your work someday. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll see you when I'm back in Portland.
Hopefully when the pandemic goes down, maybe we can invite you over to the studios or something.
Yes, I would love that. I would love to see what everyone's making.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Thanks for joining us, Jeffrey. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye,
you.
you guys.
Have a good day.
Yeah. Bye. You have a good day too.